BFTB, best fight the best. So this is a response video to a YouTuber named Motor City Cobra, who came at me with some things that I'm guessing he believed to be facts about Luis Ortiz and Anthony Joshua. I'm guessing he's believing them to be facts. I don't know where he got that information from, but you know, he laid out a timeline about how Luis Ortiz should have waited for Anthony Joshua. He should have waited, and then he would have got, you know, his chance at the WBA. He would have got a mandatory. He would have got this, and he would have got that had he waited. And he said this stuff as if he knew what he was talking about. He didn't really say anything, but he wrote it, and he wrote it like twice on one of my videos. He clearly and obviously did not watch the video that I made that detailed meticulously the entire Luis Ortiz Anthony Joshua saga. He clearly did not watch that video that not only detailed it meticulously, it gave dates, it gave times, articles, things of that nature, of which I still have. So it's really not hard to post, but I'm tired of doing other people's research. Plus, I enjoy the debate, so I don't mind people making themselves look stupid. I don't mind it at all. But Mr. Motor City Cobra, your timeline is grossly false. Grossly false. And the one thing that I wanted to point out is some nonsense that this dude said about how, you know, had Ortiz just, you know, stuck around, he'd be the mandatory, but since he fought Deontay Wilder, he lost his mandatory slot. So there are multiple things that is jacked up with that statement in itself. Multiple. Because, again, if you watch the video that I made where I meticulously broke down the Ortiz-Joshua saga, one, you will know that Luis Ortiz was the WBA mandatory a year before Cobra was the mandatory. He was the WBA mandatory before Anthony Joshua was even a champion. You know, and that's the excuse that you AJ protectors use. Oh, Joshua won the IBF title first, so he's got to defend that belt first. That's the excuse you guys use. That's the excuse y'all use. That's the excuse that Eddie Hearn used, because he knows you guys don't do your research. He knows you all are too either stupid, lazy, or your mental capacity is not one that you can think on your own. You prefer to let someone else do the thinking and follow their word. But the problem is, if that person that you're following that's doing the thinking did any research, well, then they will come to the exact same conclusion that I did, because my conclusion isn't based on my thoughts. You know what I'm saying? In all honesty, if you want to keep it 100, I felt like Luis Ortiz should not have fought Deontay Wilder, and he should have just waited around to get his WBA title shot. That was my opinion. That's what I believed, because I felt like Anthony Joshua was clearly ducking him, clearly avoiding him, and Luis Ortiz was in a position where he didn't have to do nothing. He didn't have to fight nobody. He didn't have to do any fights. He didn't have to do nothing. He could just sat back and said, nope, I'm the WBA mandatory. I'm not doing shit. You're going to fight me. I ain't doing nothing. You can try to duck me all you want. I'm not going nowhere. But then at the end of the day, you got to understand the same thing that you guys will say when it suits your narrative. Boxing is a business. If he's not fighting, how is he getting paid? If he's not fighting, who's paying his bills? They're just mysteriously going away. He has to fight, i.e. freezing people out. You force them to do things they don't want to do, which is the reason why y'all can't force Deontay Wilder to do shit, because he's a millionaire already, and he's a WBC champion. So you want a shot at the title? You know what I'm saying? The narrative with that is flipped. It's no longer he's chasing Anthony Joshua. No, Anthony Joshua that motherfucker's fast. He's got motherfucking ridiculous. He got Barry Sanders juke moves. That motherfucker is slipping and sliding left and right. And he's got a whole stadium of fans, sheep and protectors that is cheering him on while he's doing it. So, Deontay Wilder said, fuck you then. You know what I'm saying? You clearly don't want to see me. So I'm moving on. But anyway, it's not about Wilder. You clearly, Mr. Motor City Cobra, you did not do your research. You did not do your homework. Because Anthony Joshua had a mandatory of Luis Ortiz the second he beat Vladimir Klitschko. The second he beat Vladimir Klitschko, he had a mandatory. And if I'm not mistaken, he had 120 days. 120 days to make that fight. If I'm not mistaken. I believe that was the time frame. I didn't look at my old video, and I didn't look at the research that I did. I'm just going off the dome right now. So I know for a fact the WBA sent Vladimir Klitschko, Anthony Joshua, and Luis Ortiz a letter prior to Anthony Joshua fighting for the WBA belt against Vladimir Klitschko, and told all three parties, the winner of Anthony Joshua, Vladimir Klitschko, must fight Ortiz next. That's a factual statement. Facts, and WBA sent that out prior to the Vladimir Klitschko Anthony Joshua fight. That's why my thing was, fuck that Luis Ortiz. Don't fight nobody. This motherfucker can't duck you. He can't duck you. He can't. You know what I'm saying? But again, I'm not Luis Ortiz. I'm not in his shoes. I don't pay his bills. You know what I'm saying? If he's not fighting somebody, then he's not getting paid. So he has to fight somebody. You know what I'm saying? And according to you all, Deontay Wilder was ducking him. You know what I'm saying? Deontay Wilder would never fight him. Deontay Wilder would never step up and fight real competition. And that's who Luis Ortiz was to you guys prior to Deontay Wilder actually fighting him. You know what I'm saying? As long as that fight was never signed, it was, Deontay Wilder is ducking. He will never fight Luis Ortiz. Al Heyman will never put him with a killer like that. He will never risk. The WBC will protect Deontay Wilder. He will never fight Luis Ortiz. Whatever. Anyways, so Anthony Joshua received the same letter Vladimir Klitschko did. He said himself, that he wants to fight Luis Ortiz. He said that himself. Not that he wants him, that he's willing to fight him. He never said he wants to fight. He said he's willing to fight him. Whatever. All fine and dandy. But you said that Anthony Joshua never had a chance never had a chance to fight his WBA mandatory. That is a lie, because Anthony Joshua was always supposed to fight his WBA mandatory first. Because that was the belt. That belt had a mandatory to it before the IBF had a mandatory to it. The mandatory does not follow the person, it follows the belt. But I'm sure you don't know that, and that's okay. If I win the IBF title today, the IBF title has no mandatory to it, but I won the WBC belt 2 months ago, you know what I'm saying, and the WBC belt had a mandatory to it, then my mandatory is the WBC first, because the WBC had a mandatory to it. Now on the inverse, if I win the IBF title and it has no mandatory, and I won that last year, well then the next time I have to fight I'd have to defend my mandatory is a year to the date of when I won the title, unless I get an extension, which I can do. And they allow extensions when you have circumstances like you win the IBF title, you know what I'm saying, a year ago, you just won the WBA title. The WBA title has a mandatory to it, and you are obligated to face that mandatory before you face the IBF belt, before you face the IBF mandatory. Then you can get an extension from the IBF and you tell them the circumstances and they say, okay, but your IBF mandatory must be fought next. You can't fight nobody else. So I don't care if there's a big money fight next, you can't fight it. No mandatories, no unifications, none of that. Your next is the IBF. Then after that, you can discuss unifications and others. That's what they do. But you guys muddy the waters to make it seem like, oh no, he has to defend. He won his IBF title first. He has to defend it. He has to defend it first. And so that's not true. But even if it was true, the IBF mandatory was Kubrat Pulev. That was the mandatory. Kubrat Pulev pulled out. So the mandatory slot became vacant. Or else Kubrat Pulev would still be the mandatory right now. The mandatory slot became vacant. What Eddie Hearn did is politic in order to duck Luis Ortiz, because the moment the mandatory became vacant, because the mandatory challenger was Kubrat Pulev, not Carlos Takam, it was Kubrat Pulev. And if you don't believe that, if you don't believe that the mandatory slot became vacant, or it could have been postponed, however you want to call it, just look at two other examples in two other sanctioning bodies. When Povetkin postponed his fight, and he was supposed to fight Deontay Wilder in September of 2015, and he postponed it, you know what I'm saying, to January, and he postponed it again. So he postponed it because he wanted to fight Marius Wack. He fought Marius Wack. He postponed it again in January because he got an injury. You know what I'm saying? A bullshit injury. A cut over his eye. Was his mandatory slot just moved? No, it was postponed. He didn't lose it. It was just postponed. So Wilder fought somebody else. So had Wilder had another belt with another mandatory, well, then he could have fought that mandatory. And if there was some type of discrepancy, you know, with the obligations on who came first, well, then that got removed when Povetkin postponed. If Wilder had another belt. When Povetkin postponed, then all Wilder would have then is one mandatory. And you guys would have been screaming bloody murder if he didn't fight Luis Ortiz, if he had the WBA belt. If Deontay Wilder had the WBA belt and the WBC belt, his mandatory was Povetkin. And Povetkin postponed, and then Deontay Wilder fought Spilka because Dupa, the first, because that's who we fought the first time when fucking what's the name postponed. You know, he fights Dupa in a voluntary. You guys would have been going fucking crazy. Why aren't you fighting Luis Ortiz? You're ducking your mandatory. And then I got some other idiots writing me talking about why doesn't Wilder fight his mandatories? Like, what mandatories? what mandatories? His mandatory was Povetkin. Povetkin postponed for damn near 2 years. A little bit over a year and a half, he postponed until the fight got canceled, which removed the fucking mandatory. The fight was not sanctioned. So if it's not sanctioned, it's no longer a mandatory. So that's one mandatory that's gone. I mean, he's only been a champion for 3 years. You know what I'm saying? You're supposed to fight a mandatory at least once every year, right? So you're saying that's 3 mandatories. Well, a damn near a year and a half, almost 2 years of the 3 years, was already gone dealing with Povetkin. So now he only had 1 mandatory after that. Damn near 2 years out of 3 years is gone dealing with Povetkin. Totally Povetkin's fault. You know what I'm saying? So that means he's only got 1 year out of that. A little bit over a year. Okay, he fought Bermane Stiverne, who was his mandatory. Done. His next mandatory is Dominic Breazeale. Nobody wants to see that fight. Everybody wants to see Wilder, Fury. That's what everybody wants to see. Now, yeah, that's what they don't give a fuck about Dominic Breazeale. So why doesn't Wilder fight his mentor? Whatever. But anyways, listen, bro. Your opinions are grossly false, and they're grossly mistaken. You need to do a little bit more research. You need to do a little bit more. Anthony Joshua should have never fought Carlos Takam, because when Kubrat Pulev pulled out, then Anthony Joshua should have immediately started negotiating with Luis Ortiz to defend the WBA strap immediately. There should have been no let me politic for Pulev and blah, because even before Pulev was even the mandatory, Eddie Hearn was trying to fight Kubrat Pulev. He saw something in him. He was trying to get Joshua to fight him. Even before that, he was willing to. He was. How are you chasing that? Like, this is a factual statement. Eddie Hearn has been trying to get Anthony Joshua to and Kubrat Pulev to fight. He's been trying to get Pulev to fight him before the dude was the mandatory. I mean, I still got the articles, bro. But then after he became the mandatory, he was persistent with getting that. That's the fight he wanted. Pulev. Even though the WBA said you have 128 days, the winner that we are allowing, like Ortiz is allowing you guys to fight, because Ortiz did not have to allow Anthony Joshua to fight Vladimir Klitschko for the WBA strap because he was the mandatory. He allowed them to do it. He was lied to, and he was told that he will be next. And he was paid step-aside money, and he was lied to. Eddie Hearn lied to him. And then right after that, which is the reason why he was about to sue the motherfuckers, because the WBA was not supposed to allow that shit. So your opinions, your timeline is grossly mistaken, my man. It's grossly mistaken. Anthony Joshua was never supposed to fight Carlos Takam. He should have fought Luis Ortiz. And he could have fought him the 28th of October. The same day that he fought, what's the name? The same day he fought Takam, he could have fought Luis Ortiz. And you're saying, oh, well, the WBA took his mandatory. The WBA fucked him over, but the WBA didn't have to fuck him over. The WBA removed Luis Ortiz from their rankings and banned him for a year for a test that they didn't even do. They removed him from the rankings and banned him for a year against their own words. Their words are, we don't follow other sanctioning bodies tests unless we do them, unless we provide them. Which is the reason why Povetkin didn't get removed from the WBA rankings. It's the reason why Povetkin became the WBA mandatory. It's the reason why Povetkin's fight with Johan Duhaupas was sanctioned by the WBA. That was all within the same year time frame that he popped hot 6 times. Well, year and a half time frame, because he popped hot 6 times. A and B, Meldonium, 4 times. A and B, Meldonium, then the A and B, Meldonium again, and then the A and B, Osterin. That's 6 tests. 6. Now, albeit it's 6 results of failed. You guys can slice it, dice it, sugarcoat it how you want to, but all 6 tests are failed tests, and the WBA didn't do anything. They never removed him from anything, and as a matter of fact, they elevated him. You might want to go watch my video when I actually broke this saga down before you start making up weird timelines, because I'm the wrong dude to go at when it comes to the timelines, because I actually did the research for weeks. But you're entitled to make yourself look bad if that's what you want to do. Now, that's not the point of this video. It's just a response. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not like you were disrespectful, nothing to me, so I don't want to be disrespectful back to you. But I think you should go ahead and do a little bit more research before you start making those false claims that, AJ couldn't fight Ortiz. He couldn't fight him, because Ortiz had already signed to fight with Wilder, which is a lie. That's a lie. And I don't know if you guys really know this. But many times, contracts for fights are not signed until the day before the fight or the day of the fight. You know what I'm saying? Like, many times that happens. So if you can show me If you can show me anywhere, anything from anybody that says the fight with Luis Ortiz and Deontay Wilder was signed, sealed, and delivered in July, then we can have a conversation. But I looked. I searched intrusively. And the only thing that I found was that they were in negotiations, because Anthony Joshua was giving him the runaround, and Eddie Hearn and them were saying that Pulev is the guaranteed next fight. Guaranteed. They are fighting Pulev, and they are willing to vacate the WBA title. That's what Eddie Hearn said out of his own mouth. I have the article still to this day. Eddie Hearn said that. They are willing to vacate the WBA if the WBA tries to mandate Anthony Joshua to fight Luis Ortiz instead of Pulev, instead of them defending their IBF title against Pulev. You might want to do a little bit of research, bro. As long as you're just having a debate with me, I'll gladly have one back. BFTB, and I'm out.